Am I audible to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ragini, let's get started, Ragini.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We welcome our esteemed panelists and our moderator, Professor Amitabh Bandyopadhyay, to this session where we'll be discussing about the gaps in the incubation ecosystem in India. Startups and social enterprises are widely regarded as the key to addressing the developmental challenges, especially in emerging economies such as India. However, no journey is agnostic of the roadblocks that lie ahead. On that note, I would like to introduce everyone present here, to our eclectic panelists who will take us through the persisting gaps in the incubation ecosystem in India. Mr. Manoj Kumar is the founder of Social Alpha, a multi-stage innovation and venture development platform for science and technology startups. With an experience spanning about 3 decades, Mr. Kumar is also the co-founder and director of Sustain Plus Energy Foundation and a board member at First. Our next guest is Mr. Paneerselvam Ramaswamy, who is presently working as Principal Director, MSME, Technology Development Center in Agra, and also heading the Indo-German Tool Room at Indore as its General Manager in charge, both of which are the constituent establishments under the administrative control of the Office of Development Commissioner, Ministry of MSME, Government of India. Our next panelist is Dr. P.K. Datta, who is a scientist F and head DSIR, Government of India. Additionally, he also handles other divisions such as Industrial Research, Development Promotion Program, PRISM, and UN Asian and Pacific Center for Transfer of Technology. Mr. Jeet Vijay is the CEO of Meti Startup Hub. He comes with a rich advisory experience in domains of private equity, venture capital, and strategic management. In parallel, he is working with the Government of India to support policy making and program implementation aimed at development of the MSME sector. Our next guest, Dr. Sunil K Agarwal, is presently working as a senior scientist in the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. He's handling the flagship scheme of DST, namely Technology Advancement for Rural Areas, or TARA, that aims to address issues related to livelihoods and conservation. His key areas of focus include consolidating grassroots institutions, development of social enterprises, and widening the reach of need-based technologies in remote rural areas. With an in-depth knowledge of the global higher education and research ecosystem, Dr. Jacob Williams is currently serving as the Counselor for Innovation, Research, and Higher Education at the Danish Embassy in India. He's passionate about connecting the Danish and Indian knowledge actors and driving innovation with a focus on strategic sector cooperation. A warm welcome to all our panelists, and thank you for gracing us with your presence today. Now over to Professor Bandyopadhyay, who will be moderating this session for us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Professor, we are muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Ragini, for the very nice introduction of all my esteemed guests. As I mentioned in my email last night, that one of our guests, Mr. Manoj Kumar, will have to run at 2 p.m. He has another very important meeting. Not that it is more important than this one, but it is an important meeting nonetheless. So I would request Manoj to therefore start the session. Manoj, you have been at the helm of Social Alpha for quite some time now, 10, 12 years, Manoj? Yeah, we cannot hear you, Manoj. There is some problem at your end. We cannot hear you. No, you are muted. Now you are unmuted. Okay, so Yeah, technology has its challenges. Clearly, it is not as good as being on the same stage.
Mr. Manoj, just refresh your screen. I think it should be okay. Just
No,
refresh.
Manoj is still not working.
Okay. Uh, could you hear him earlier?
No, I could not. I could not hear him. Manoj, you can hear us, right? But we cannot hear you. Uh, we cannot hear you, Manoj.
Ah,
Okay, so while Aditi asked Rishi or someone to fix
sure,
Manoj's connection issues,
sure.
and also see if you can fix Dr. Manish Silvan's name, please.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
okay, so while we get Manoj to debug his system, let me start with an interesting anecdote that I just learned from one of my colleagues in the incubator, that which Jeet may not know. Our incubator started in the year 2000. And in 2004, the first funding agency to get connected with us was METI. Okay, in those days, it used to be called MCIT, and since then we have had association with METI. Soon after that, the next organization to join us was DST, and DST has been very, very generous with us. Both DST and soon thereafter DSIR, uh, they serve the ecosystem enormously in terms of, because our incubator is primarily focused on hardware development, and both DST and DSIR have schemes specifically for such companies, and that is like a unique facilitator. But then we do see in the experience of last 20 years that fantastic technologies eventually uh, hit a wall sometimes, and today we will be discussing that aspect. So let me start with Dr. Sunil Agarwal. So, Dr. Agarwal, DST has been serving the incubation ecosystem for a very, very long time. I would request you to please take us through the journey of DST, how and when it started serving the incubation ecosystem, and a little bit about seed and the other verticals of DST like NEB and TDB, etc. And eventually, from your experience, which is a lot of experience, please flag one gap that you perceive exists in the incubation ecosystem. My job is to collect all these gaps elicited by each one of you, so that in the next round we can see how we are geared up to address those gaps. So over to you, Dr. Agarwal.
Thanks, Professor. Is I audible now? Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity given to us, particularly in the seed division for DST. I have seen the email which you have sent yesterday, and it is correct that there are so many verticals, and the National Entrepreneurship Development Board is actually the right agency which is supporting to nurture incubator ecosystem. That's what. And today I had a discussion with one of my colleagues, and there are 150 incubators are there which are being supported by DST. And you are saying the gaps in the system are there, of course, and those corrections are being made from time to time through accelerator or some other programs. And these schemes is already there. I think IIT Kanpur is also the part of that. So those initiatives are going on, and TDB initially was supporting the seed funding, but now lead is being taken by NEB of DST. And beside that, seed division is mostly working on the, as you have told, we are working mostly on the rural areas in the rural landscape, and our main actors who are in the field, they are science-based volunteer organizations, and we used to call them core support organizations. Right now, we have 26 core supported organizations who are working in different part of the country, particularly in the remote and difficult areas. And what they are trying to do, they are addressing the local challenges through technological intervention or innovations or livelihood benefits, and also for social enterprises. So in that sense, these verticals are playing different roles at the DST level. And because the problem which you are saying, the challenges within the seed division, which we are also facing, and also I have a discussion at the NEB, the challenge now in the current COVID situation is about the virtual platform. That's what we are looking for incubators. That is the major gaps now to address the challenges, because in the physical mode, the support is being given in the last 10, 20 years, but the current situation demand that we should create some virtual platform where incubators can get things which they are looking for in terms of starting the startup or as an incubator. And that's what in such process we have taken a lead in the seed division. And we are evolving a one program, TAPRISE, Technology Accelerator Platform, Rural Innovation and Social Enterprises. And that dialogue we are having, even Manojji was also part of that. So we are having a multi-stakeholder discussion, series of discussions were held, and it will involve different actors to address different factors. That is the idea. From prototyping to marketing, because these are some of the issues which are faced by such small organizations which are being supported, and they are working on the local technologies, maybe traditional one they are improving, or the products they are developing. And the related issue is about the certification and validation of such technologies at particular scale. So those are the issues which we are struggling if you talk about the social enterprise ecosystem, because the product is there maybe in the local market, but how to upscale further to boost the need what has emerged in terms of social, to address the social, ecological and economic aspect. That's what we are looking in such programs. Triple bottom line impact should be there. So those are the initiatives, but as you have mentioned, in both of the program, we are looking for that virtual platform kind of thing that can be supported, or some ideas can be made for that. And recently, the initiative also being taken at the individual innovator level, that is the entrepreneurship and residence. EIR scheme is there from NEB. And so far, 300 individuals have been supported for 1 year. This is a kind of fellowship being provided. And after 1 year, that they are engaged with the existing incubators, and they are working on that. So this is kind of support being given to the new generation and young generation who are willing to involve and nurture the ecosystem which we are looking for together. So those are the things which at this stage we have from DST point of view. And of course, if IIT Kanpur can facilitate in this process a virtual platform, so that will be an initiative which will be taken up other places also. So thank you, Dr. Bandyopadhyay, and these are the things which I think I should flag here as you are looking for the gaps in the incubation ecosystem in India.
Amitabh, can't hear you.
Good that now I could hear Manoj. Particularly the segment that your seed is operating, the rural setting, there, as you have rightly pointed out, prototyping, understanding of marketing, these are real challenges. Certification and validation is a is an animal that needs to be tackled at all levels. I will come to that at the end. And of course, virtual platform, we heard it loud and clear, and hopefully we will be able to help DST with that. Manoj, since you will be leaving us soon, so Manoj, you are associated with Social Alpha for what now, 10, 12 years now?
No, Amitabh, I founded Social Alpha in 2016, so it's almost 5 years now. Yeah.
Okay. So, but I know that you are deeply involved in the whole startup ecosystem, and the disclosure from my side is that Manoj is also one of the members of the board of IIT Kanpur Incubator. Manoj, you have enormous experience, and you know the places where often the entrepreneurs get stuck. Like you have witnessed the enormous opening up of the startup innovation and incubation ecosystem, the encouragement and facilitation from the government, but at the same time, you are also aware of the gaps in the ecosystem. Since that is the topic, so I would request your perspective on this.
Thank you, Amitabh, for inviting me for this panel discussion with this esteemed panel. Let me focus on the gaps, and by starting that, over the last several years, Government of India has built a very powerful mechanism to promote incubators. If you see Department of Science and Technology, Department of Biotechnology through BIRAC, Niti Aayog, MITI, there are multiple government organizations and departments who have promoted incubators. So if you see the incubation ecosystem, physical incubators have been built over years and have done exceedingly well, especially some of them shine apart. The gap still exists in incubators, current ability to curate startups and take them on a forward journey where they can help them raise capital and get market access, right? A lot of times what we see, because we see a pipeline of startups coming from various incubators into our investment pipeline as well, we do not see that entrepreneurs are coming with their business plan and pitches well prepared many times, which effectively demonstrates that in the incubation centers, enough attention has not been paid in developing the business plan, testing and validating those plans, stress testing them, and creating a pitch, right? So there is a gap in the way these startups then present for the seed capital or even for pre-series, series round. A lot of focus, which rightly is there on the product development and testing, but the go-to-market preparation lacks. I think that is something that most of the startup incubators need to fix in their in their curriculum and their intervention. Yeah. One of the things that I would say that we still have an approach where if we have say $100,000 in terms of resources, we still have a tendency of distributing that equally to all the startups which are there in the center. I think we have to get over that socialistic hangover where we are governed by an equal distribution approach and need to ensure that for the winning, successful, promising startup, we can allocate larger amount of capital, right? So resource allocation has to be linked to the promise and the business plan and execution capability of a startup and not necessarily on a distribution model, right? I think these gaps are linked to, overall, in the overall way, the way we manage incubation today. So managing incubation has to be an activity with slightly more skin in the game on behalf of the incubation centers management team and the board of directors. And I would like to say that, like, for example, in IIT Kanpur, what I have noticed that the engagement with alumni entrepreneurs is very strong, and alumni entrepreneurs are involved in board meetings as well as in mentoring startups. And this is very important, that startups actually need entrepreneurial know-how. The theoretical piece they can read online or check with any source of information. So startups are not worried about information. They can get it themselves. The smart people can find information. They want practical entrepreneurial know-how. Something like in the venture capital world, we say operating partner role. So they need mentors who are willing to get hands on in their journey rather than people who give them gyan, right? So I think a lot of startups really need that practical entrepreneurial know how, and incubation centers can fill that gap. So I will stop here, Amitava, because the gaps I am trying to highlight are not structural or policy gaps. These are incubation center management gaps, and I expect incubation centers need to move up the value chain. They need to be little more than the distributors of government grant or infrastructure managers. They need to have a stake in the startups and their journey. I will stop there.
I couldn't agree more with you, Manoj, on that. That the incubation centers, we cannot operate as post offices for government money. We need to certainly be as entrepreneurial as the young entrepreneurs are, and we need to definitely upscale, skill ourselves to be able to help the companies properly. I completely agree with you. I will now move to Dr. And Manoj. I do understand that you may have to leave in another 4 or 5 minutes, so just feel free, just drop off. And in advance, thank you so much for taking time out. Yeah. So I will now move on to Dr. Paneerselvam. Dr. Saab, I would like to let you know that we have been associated with the MSME entrepreneurship support wing since 2011, and we are deeply appreciative of what MSME Ministry has done for our incubator. But now I would like to learn more from you in terms of the history of MSME getting into the incubation ecosystem, and what are the different areas of activities, and at least one gap area that you would like to highlight. You need to unmute yourself, sir.
Good evening. MSME has started actually the scheme for support for entrepreneurship development programs and through incubations. That's the scheme they have set up. Originally, this was to support the DST scheme of TBI. Originally, it was to supplement the activities of DST incubations, TBIs. So this scheme particularly aimed to promote the entrepreneurship and also innovation among the students community. See, this was operated through educational institutions. That was the original. Of late, it has seen a lot of changes. It depends on the situations, depends on the need. And now the lot of advantages of scheme. The original this one was to supplement DST scheme, TBIs, with some financial grant for innovative ideas. So operated through educational institutions. That's the not others. Only educational institutions can get into this scheme. So that was the original history. Now this scheme has seen a lot of up and downs, and some of the period it was inactive. And last year it has seen a lot of revamping and upscaling. And originally it was started with the 6 lakh rupees, a grant for innovative idea, and a product idea or a process idea. So it aims for a process idea also, because promoting innovation among MSMEs. So the MSME thought, so the process innovation also to be promoted. That was the idea. So 6, that's generally not happen with the incubations. Only mostly, we concentrate on product innovations. So this scheme particularly has aimed to process innovations, but we are able to do very little on that now. And this is the history. Now it is very active, and this year, of course, a lot of changes have come. And we are again thinking whether it can go with the same revamped scheme of last year's, or it needs to be again modified. Because of the COVID, there was a little delay in bringing the implementation of the scheme, but still it will go on. Now the present situations, the innovative product idea or a process idea is likely to get a 15 lakh rupees as a grant. And the beauty of this grant is it is disbursed in two installments. One is 1/3 of the grant is given at the beginning once the product idea is approved. And the second installment is once you spend this first installment, then you can claim for a second installment. I think IIT Kanpur also one of our beneficiary. So we have operated through IITs also. And the one more beauty is the scheme is not only one incubation. For example, educational institutions like IIT can have many. See, IIT Chennai has got IIT Madras. Sorry, IIT Madras has got two incubation center, approved by us. That means two host institution status. One is for management institute, another one is for IIT technical wing for I think electrical department. It's run by electrical department. Mr. I don't remember his name. Is very popular. So he is the professor is running the scheme. So now the situation is recently we have announced for uploading of innovative ideas. Subsequently, there was a scrutiny, and more than 100 and 150 ideas have been approved only from the government institutions. There are many private institutions because of the fund, limited fund, and only limited ideas. That means only from the government institutions have been taken and approved. And the others will follow most probably. So far around,
Dr. Pandiselvam, so we need to wrap up. So if you would identify the gap that you would like to highlight.
Yes. See here, what we feel is these ideas are not able to get most of the venture capital financing. That's the only the problem. I don't know. Most of the ideas are not very successfully have been implemented and brought under the venture capitalists through finance, and then it's brought to the market. That's the one big gap, and we have to just see how best we can identify. Then another one, the important things, the linkage with the other schemes, other schemes also. So the ministry also have one more scheme called ASPER. I don't know whether you know about it. See, ASPER is a short form of a scheme for promotion of industries, innovation, and rural industries and entrepreneurship. That's ASPER, a scheme for promotion of innovation, rural industries, and ASPER. The ministry is thinking of taking it in a big way this year. And the technology center, particularly we have the Process Product Development Center, Agra, has got approval for 3 ASPER schemes. Now the main objective is taking innovation to the rural area and to promote livelihood innovations. That's the another concept is picking up. This is going to be in a major way we are going to work on this. So the technology center has got 3 approved centers. Even Srinagar we have 1 center approved, and Kerala 1 center approved. Then Rajasthan also we have approved. So like this, there are many centers approved. And
that's very good.
Yeah,
thank you.
This is another scheme. All it's not for engineering institutions alone. Other NGOs also can get into the scheme. So this is the message that I wanted to. So everyone should look into it. Everything is online now, so they can upload their proposal DPRs and being scrutinized by the ministry. It is handled by the ministry directly. The first scheme is incubation scheme is by the Office of Development Commissioner. This is what I just wanted to say now. Maybe the second round. Any clarifications I can give?
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
Representative Room. So now I will come to Mr. Jeet. So looks like Jeet, is it okay? Can you hear me? I cannot hear you. I could hear you earlier. Now I cannot hear you. No, I think you try without the headphone. Like you. No, we cannot hear you at all. No. But something was working before, now it is not working. Well, so let us try to work on that. In the meantime, let me go to Dr. Jacob. So, Dr. Jacob, as I
can you hear me now?
Yeah. Now I can hear you. Okay, great. So, Jeet, as you are different from the representatives of other funding agencies today that we have in our panel, is that you have been in the US innovation and entrepreneurship scene for a very long time. Then you were with a private organization in Pune, and now you have just started your tenure at MSH. So you therefore will have an outsider's view as well. And now you are part of a government funding agency and an ecosystem that is trying to improve the whole startup ecosystem of the country. So it will be fantastic if we get to hear from you, if you do a little comparison of how you have seen the innovation ecosystem in the US, how the government plays a role there versus how the government plays a role here, what are the pluses and minuses, and what are some of the obvious gaps that we have in our system. So over to you, Jit.
All right, thank you so much for having me on this panel. It's great to be part of this esteemed group. And before we get into where we are today, let's look back where we are coming from. Right, 30 years of innovation ecosystem building in India, right? And DST and Dr. Agarwal and their team took the leadership role to start bringing that innovation orientation and promotion of technologies in the system. And why do I go 30 years back is the cultural context. Right. India is a collective society, risk averse, societal expectation, more of a socialism background, pre-independence days. Now those are the attributes of a society which are antithetical to what startup nation is about. So when I compare it to US and India, I like to compare it on the values. A individualistic society versus collective, right? A risk-oriented versus a risk-averse. A individualistic society versus collective and the good of the common. Now, so when you have these values and these systems, then the trajectory of growth is very different. So if you look at it in 30 years, what DST has done, it created that, led the path, and now today, India has the second or third largest number of startups. Can you believe the journey we have taken in the years where it was viewed as a failure to not get a job and start a company because people thought you won't get married, right? It was a big failure. Now that culture has come in, the new generation of Indian entrepreneurs are willing to take the long shot, are willing to bet their career and give up on marriage and family expectation. So we have been successful in the parameter of building a ecosystem. And under our Honorable Prime Minister in the last 4 years, 5 years of Startup India, 2016, Digital India, you can see the impact that the ecosystem has generated. In the time of this crisis, we had all these digital schemes, be it DBT, be it monitoring. They benefited tremendously to the marginal sections of the society, which was not connected to the banking or technology. And all these things came from the orientation of building an ecosystem. Now, where are India and US different is that, okay, academic institutes are great to build the ecosystem because that's what happened on East Coast in US and West Coast, right? MIT and Harvard and Boston, because academic institutes have the repository of resources required to create companies. They have the alumni network, they have the labs, they have the infrastructure, they have the training and placement connects in corporates. So they have the ecosystem. The only thing missing is the academic institutions don't have the core competency for enterprise creation. They're more teaching and research. Now, so we have done that. We have built localized ecosystem across this country. But the next level is monetizing the ecosystem. And to monetize these thousands of startups that are coming in, you need to bring private sector orientation, because private sector is more return driven, more outcome driven, and more time value of money, right? So it's more about how do you measure the impact. So once, let's say, we focus from the ecosystem building to startup monetization and impact creation, then we will revise our schemes, which we are doing at Mighty as well, always looking to figure out how do we engage more corporates, how do we engage more investors, so we can, increase the bang for the buck that we invest in startups, either through as grant. So that's what I did at University of Texas when I was the assistant vice chancellor for investments and entrepreneurship. Is we identified our technologies and we created a $60 million fund, a commercialization fund to invest in early stage companies coming out of university campuses. Because unless we put our own money, we cannot scale it. But in India, so once we get more private sector participants involved, then what will happen is it will change the organizational structure of an incubator. Incubator, just let's say McKinsey's 7S framework, right? What is the strategy? Okay, what is the structure? What are the systems you have in places? What are the staff and their core competencies? What is the shared culture? What is the culture of that organization you're building? Because unless, and incubator is a service enterprise, we're always working to please our entrepreneurs. So once we bring that capitalism oriented, a focus on actual return realization, which is a private sector dominion, because private sector operates at speed, scale, and strategy. So we do those kind of things, bring in more of these people, then the culture will shift to the next level. And then all these schemes, all these clusters that we are building, and the government, be it MSME Ministry, DST, BIRAC, Mighty, everyone is pumping in resources because Prime Minister is passionate about building this ecosystem. And in 5 years, Startup India is only 5 years old. If you look at it as a Prime Minister, it's a toddler, right? It's a growing pain. But imagine the next 10 years, if this ecosystem really leverages the international cooperation, like Dr. Jacob is here today, if we leverage international cooperation with Europe, Middle East, Africa, so much can be created which benefits the whole humanity. And I think expertise knows no boundary now with the digital technology. And so we are happy to, figure out how do we all collaborate to co-create and create larger impact. So that's where the difference is between India and US at this point.
Yep. So couldn't agree with you more, Jit. So before I go to Dr. Jacob, let me share my own enthusiasm about this whole ecosystem. As you rightly pointed out, that when the COVID crisis hit, I am in the process of writing a book on the journey of one of our incubated companies, and in that context, I was doing some research. And it was apparent for all of you as well from newspapers that when the crisis hit, our country did not have the resources to make PPE kits, N95 masks, or diagnostics, or ventilators, or any of the medical devices. Like, it was looking really gloomy situation. And when you look at the country today, aren't we all very proud that every single solution of COVID crisis in India came from within the country, and it came from the startup ecosystem. You take MyLabs and then Feluda from IGIB Delhi, the diagnostic solutions. You take Noka Robotics and many other companies that came up with the indigenous ventilator solutions. You take our own incubated company, Spin Nanotech, and several others that have made N95 masks. PPE kits. Now India is the second largest producer in the world for PPE kits. So what that tells me is that there is no dearth of talent in the country. What is lacking is that we need to understand that why this ecosystem did not fire 2 years back, but now. I think, as Jeet rightly pointed out, that through efforts of DST, MSME, DSIR, METI, the ecosystem building has been largely successful. DBT. If the ecosystem were not there, no matter how much talent you have, we would not have been able to rise to the occasion the way we have as a nation. And the other thing that is obvious is that when the entrepreneurs work on a problem statement that desperately needs a solution, then the business is automatic. My fear is that often, particularly in the academic institute linked incubation ecosystem, the problems that are being solved look very similar to the problems that are being solved in the academic laboratories as well. So until and unless the problem statements are directly sourced from the society, that gap cannot be filled. So now, with that, I would like to come to Dr. Jacob. Scandinavian countries are, the real IP-driven economies. Like it is known to the world that it is not the US, not the other part of the Europe, but it is the Scandinavian countries. And my personal interaction with scientific colleagues in Denmark have reinforced that idea. I have been working with them now for 7 years, and I know that how from the very conception of a basic science project, they keep an eye on the translational aspect. And so there is a whole cultural difference. So Jacob, from that perspective, my questions to you is that since when Denmark is trying to reach out to other countries for the collaboration in the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, what are the other countries that you have experience with, and how would you compare the ecosystem between these other countries that you may have experience with and India, and certainly between Denmark and India? So over to you, Jacob.
Thank you, Amitabh, and thank you for having me and Denmark represented here in this panel. I think it's a good question to ask at this moment. What are the gaps? The first thing that had to happen was to establish the infrastructure. So now we have to figure out how do we make this infrastructure actually have the effects and the impact that we wanted to see from it. I just also want to congratulate you on the IIT Kanpur's and your own incubator success during COVID. We are wearing your masks at the embassy. So, and I was visiting Ministry of Health last week. They are also wearing them, and they're very proud to say that this is an IIT Kanpur mask. So that aside, we built our innovation system with a view to entrepreneurship in the last 20 years, I would say. So we've been in the game in a serious way the same amount of time that you have in India. We built it out of another gap analysis. We had a very strong research output, and we had a very strong research-intensive larger companies. And we realized that the larger companies, they worked very well with the universities. The problem was the small and medium-sized companies and the entrepreneurs, they were hardly knowledge intensive. So how could we influence that sector and use that sector to leverage some of the idea power that we wanted to see unfold in the knowledge society? Of course, it was built around the idea that we were moving into a knowledge economy. So for that reasons, we set up something called clusters. And these clusters, I think you must have also familiarized yourself a little bit with them in working with colleagues at, I think, Southern Denmark University. They are meant to bring together companies, industry interests, universities, and public sector interests. And I think a lot of what we are struggling with today is finding out how to get the good problems to the entrepreneurs at the universities and make sure that the problems identified at the universities match those problems that we get to them from the outside. So basically, we did what we call this knowledge triangle clusters in all the different sectors of our society, and I think that is one of the reasons why incubation and entrepreneurship at universities is so readily accepted in society nowadays, and also is seen as a power for transformation. That was in the early 2000s that these things were established under the idea of globalization. So we had what was called a Globalization Council, which is another, I think, advantage we have in the Danish. We are a nation of sailors. That basically means that we are a nation of people who are fearful of missing out. We suffer from fear of missing out. We think someone is always going on in other locations that we are missing. So we were looking at India, and we were looking at China, and we were looking at the US, and we could see how these nations were moving forward, and where were we to be seen. So for that reason, we established what was called innovation centers, first in Silicon Valley. Then after, in the next wave, we went to Shanghai and to Delhi, and we went to Seoul. We went to Sao Paulo in Brazil. Recently, we have added Munich and Tel Aviv. The two last additions are only because the concept works so well. So we took some countries closer to that we could boost a little bit through that. And recently, we have also added Boston in the US. The idea is that whole entrepreneurial part of our economy is not enough if it becomes successful in a national context. Denmark is a very small country, but we belong to Europe, of course, and have Europe as a market as well. But we needed to move that translational capacity to other markets, including India. And what we want in India is two things. First of all, we want to be present with our companies and our products and our solutions, so that we can become successful. But we also want to take the problems from that context. So as I started out saying, big important thing for the entrepreneurial system is to get the correct problem formulation internally into the incubator or the program in which the youth is, or doesn't have to be the youth, but in which the entrepreneurial spirit is being formulated. So we are in that sense, we are very dependent on translating Indian problems into Danish and Danish Indian startups, which is why we also want to collaborate with a place like SIIC at Kanpur, because really what we need is to bring the entrepreneurial ideas from Denmark into direct contact with the problem formulations at your end. So I think that's what I would like to, at least, I don't know if I get a chance to return, but that's one thing that I would like to comment on. Thank
you. Yeah. So now we will come back to you again, Jacob. So I have kind of summarized all the statements that have been elicited by all the colleagues. And I think I will not be terribly wrong if I put it in a string like this, that it starts from the whole concept of incubator and its role. Incubators right now are too much into perfecting the technologies and not really that much into the business aspect of the things. That is one area that needs immediate attention, as Manoj pointed out. But then there are problems associated with prototyping, with validation and certification, and then flowing the money from the private investors, whether it is venture capital or angel investment or HNI customers, etc., then all the way going to the international markets. So that is the value chain, and there are gaps in different areas. And from my perspective, I would say that this can be divided into three baskets. One that Manoj kind of hinted at, like unfortunately he is not here any longer, is that it is not just the incubators. Even the government's attitude towards the whole ecosystem as a very democratic setup has its advantages and disadvantages. So one thing is that creating this fabrication setups or prototyping setups in every small cities, small towns has its own problems. Right now, there is not much time for me to elaborate on the whole thing. Here we should really look at perhaps a hub and spoke like model where certain centers can serve a large area around it, and there has to be accountability of the centers that are provided with the wherewithals so that they can serve the purpose. But distributing the ecosystem, like the infrastructure ecosystem, in a very dilute manner perhaps is not going to be very useful. But in my opinion, the biggest problem that we have, particularly if you were looking like, yesterday, Jacob, you remember when you were giving the dry run, when you saw this platform, the first thing that I informed you that it is a made in India platform, and you were pleasantly surprised. So we generally do not associate quality with Indian products. And the way I look at it is that we do not have a very robust system which will be fair, which will be efficient, but strict in terms of compliance and quality. That the norms for excellence and compliance, product compliance, should be laid down. Those should be easy to follow. There should be elaborate infrastructure where those can be checked and met, and then only we will get to the business aspect of things. Like just because we have a product made in India, it will not penetrate the market if the quality is not good. That we have seen over and over again. Therefore, to get to the monetization aspect that Jeet was talking about, I think it is equally important that we tighten the product specification and standardization and certification process. And once that is there, when Indian products will become synonymous with high quality, then going for international markets will no longer remain a problem for us. Right now, we are aspiring to go international with rather soft products. Okay, but with the hard products like deep technology products, if we want to do that, we first will have to ensure the quality pipeline. So that is what is my own perception that I shared with all of you. We have representatives from 3 major government funding agencies. I would request Dr. Agarwal that if you have any ideas to share on how to tighten this linkage between the academic institutions, which are most often the best prototyping hub, and the regulatory setup, so that there is a seamless and time economical transition from prototyping to getting the final product.
Fine, Bandhu Sadhyaji. That is actually the issue which DST is also looking for. And from NEB division, I think that initiative is going on and deliberation is on. So I will also pass on this, what we are looking for the deliberation and the need for such process mechanism. Actually, these are the systemic gaps which needs to be addressed from DST as well. And we are also in touch with MSME as well. We are having series of meetings. So I will also flag these issues because MSME and DST are closely working earlier and nowadays also. So then we will come back to you if any
Yes.
dialogue happens, and we will keep you in loop also.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. We will be very happy to provide our inputs and some suggestions on how this can be made more efficient, not only efficient in terms of time, in the short term, cost efficient, in the longer term, time efficient for the incubated companies, and for the brand India. We need to establish a brand India. Like today, when you buy a Japanese product or a Danish product or a Swiss product, you do not think, there is a possibility that it may not work 6 months down the line. So that kind of trust we need to earn, and for that, the ecosystem needs to be. That is one gap, I think, in the ecosystem that we would all be keen
And
to
you are
see.
perfectly right that quality products, that is the need if we have to
Yes.
be in the market. Yeah, that is true.
Yes. So thank you, Dr. Agarwal. So we will be happy to work with DST and any other ecosystem players to address that gap. So Dr. Selvam, are you there having technical difficulties? Okay, so Jacob, your input on this, what do you think of this issue of quality gap? Is that something that you perceive is real, or do you think it is a figment of our imagination?
Thank you. Well, first, at least I would say there's one very big export out of India, and sometimes if it has made your policymakers very sad and sometimes very proud. But the export of talent and the export of your BTech graduates coming into our universities, MTech programs and so forth, and becoming successful also as innovators in foreign systems. I really find a lot of optimism from the whole startup wave. I think we can go maybe 7-8 years back since it really took off. It makes an alternative career for some of the brightest minds in India, and I think that we are yet to see the complete output of that shift of youth imagination in an Indian context. That said, I was discussing this issue with one of my colleagues at the Innovation Center before this meeting because of our talk yesterday. And I think he said very rightly that a lot of people who are doing a startup in India, they are focusing on the Indian market and what it takes for something to survive in an Indian market, price-wise, for example. And you don't face that same constraint in the European market. The price is not necessarily the issue. It's more that the product gives you a safe process, that you can trust that product for a long time, and that you can trust it to enhance the process that it's placed in. I think that one way of making Indian startups or the incubators coming out of your own incubator successful is by allowing it some incubation time in the European context. And I think that that's one thing that we really need to build up. Now that we are trying to send our young companies to India and to find ways of adapting to the Indian processes and the Indian projects and the Indian market, including the price and the regulatory story in India, I think we should also emphasize the return. And we do have some programs in Denmark, but it's not very consistent and it's not very clear. But I think we should try and both in the European and at the national level between the different countries and India, we should try to build these programs. And I hope that our partners here in government of India ministries are also interested in this. I think that is at least the message that we usually get. But as of now, I think both from the European Union side and from the Danish side, we've been very export-oriented. I think the challenge is to build an opportunity space which is global for our youngsters. That brings me to another issue, which I think it was. I'm not sure if it was Professor Ramaswamy who said earlier that what is produced here in India should also have a global impact. And we are now in a situation where we are living under the climate contingency, and we need to respond. And I think that by the both the European-India relationship and the Denmark-India relationship is now focused on sustainability. And that makes me think of what the Social Alpha Managing Director was mentioning about the availability of funding. I think one area where we really need to combine funds and to focus them on entrepreneurship is for the green solutions and for sustainability solutions. Right now, there is not the same short-term rate of return for those investments, but we can guarantee them a long life in our government investments and in our government programs. So we need to integrate entrepreneurship more in what we do in those areas, and then support by helping with the risk, support the entry of private money into that area. I think that should be done in global or in bilateral formats as well. There are some hurdles. We have identified them through a little research last year, but I think they can be overcome. So yes, I think that's my answer to your question, Amitav.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Jacob. So, Dr. Paneerselvam, you get the last word. So, as Dr. Agarwal highlighted, and I also feel very strongly about it. See, MSME is the nodal ministry for manufacturing, the way I look at it. And quality of manufacturing is something that we all need to be very, very aware of, because that is one aspect. India must build for the world. So any idea on how we can have a very fair but efficient, at the same time strict regulatory and certification regime, how we can integrate it with the incubation ecosystem, so that the companies that are in different incubation centers, they have an automatic entry into the certification and regulatory institute or organizations, and without much hassle. I'm not saying that we should pass substandard quality products, but what I'm saying is that, see, for an entrepreneur, time is money, literally. Like when they're waiting a year and a half for getting their product certified, nobody in the world is funding them for that wait period. Therefore, we need to have a very efficient method without compromising the quality. So your thoughts on that? You are muted, sir. Sir, you are muted.
Sorry. As well, see, the MSME ministry is also of the same thinking. See, under the office of DC MSME, recently a big revamp has been done on some of the schemes for schemes like Z, zero defect, zero effect. It was one of the very, very important and the flagship scheme announced by our honorable Prime Minister. This scheme has been revamped totally, including all the certifications process. So this gives a scope for MSMEs to go for different type of certifications. It is a quality certifications, product certifications, system certifications, and the pollution certifications. The different type of certifications where you can get a subsidy. So that most probably the MSME units may not aware of, or maybe having a problem in going for all this type of certifications. It is a big financial implication on them. So to support them, the ministry has come out with the scheme and the financial support for achieving all those certifications. So this will definitely going to bring a very big boost on the quality. That is one aspect. The second one is, as you were mentioning about the hub and spoke, government is thinking of developing almost 100 mini centers under 20 spokes, 20 main centers. So already we have around 15 plus 8, 12 main centers. So 32 plus 20 plus again, this are going to be a main centers, and under that going to be 100 center. All put together, it's around 155 centers, around 53, I think, roughly. So centers going to come. This is a technology development center. It's going to help in the innovation, support technology, and they will also support manufacturing and bringing the innovation into reality. That's another big area it's working on. That's one thing. As I already told you, there is a scheme called ASPER. It's going to be a big boost with the financial support for establishing TBI and the livelihood project at the rural level. So the idea is bringing to the grassroots level so that there may be a lot of ideas there which is not being explored. So it's going to be a big boost for innovation at the village level, livelihood projects. That's another area.
Thank
So
you.
like
Thank
this,
you very much.
yes.
So we have already overshot the time. I got very good encouraging remarks from all of you. We will stay engaged, and together we will work towards improving the innovation incubation ecosystem of the country, and particularly of IIT Kanpur. I will get back to all of you. So there is one question from the audience for Dr. Paneerselvam: how to get financial support from government for certifications? How to apply for the SAM?
Now, kindly note down. I don't think, because we are overrunning the time. Kindly note down my number 97605 I will clarify with that. See, now there is a portal called Champions Portal. So you can alternatively go to the portal and get all the informations.
Okay.
It is a one-stop portal, informatory the best.
Okay.
So you get a lot of information. It linked to many service portals.
Okay.
So kindly visit. That is one thing. And there are some centers. If is from Kanpur, then Kanpur we have a DI and we have a control rooms. We have established a control room across India. It is the latest initiative after our new secretary has joined. So the control rooms takes care of all grievances and support services. So he can approach those services also.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, it is a regionally established control centers.
Also,
so
we will get all the information from you, and we will make it publicly available through our portals.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to thank all my guests. It was a very, very important discussion of, we even overshot the time. I hope it helped our audience. I see 116 people logged in. Even if it helps 10 of them, I think this session will be very, very useful for that purpose. And I would now request all of you to please spare 10-15 minutes to visit some of our booths. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We are going backstage.